into two parts. So first we'll talk about the theory part. So I believe a lot of them are coming from a tech background and not so from a finance background. So this session will be particularly useful for them to understand various terminology which is used in trading. And the second session will be more of how you implement those things in Python. So this is the agenda for my session, where we'll typically understand how do people invest in markets, so it's financial markets, and we'll understand what are the risks which they are exposed to when investing in the market, and various models which have historically evolved, such as CAPM model, Fama-French model, and finally, what is factor investing. So that's the flow which will be following in this lecture. So this is very good image to understand how financial markets work, is how people typically invest. So, so anyone here invest in financial markets? Can you raise your hand? Oh, nice. Can you tell me how do you invest in markets? Like how do you select which assets to invest in? Hi everyone. Actually, I checked for the share and I checked some news about that particular company, how it is performing, and then I go for a long-term investing, like which is buy shares, based on the news analysis, and that's it. That's what I do. So typically we can categorize. So just for information, share is share is nothing but a piece of ownership in a company. So we say we typically invest by selecting the company who is having some good news, such as a pharma company getting a drug approval in US market, and we will actually invest in that company, and we will invest for long term. He's not a short term investor. So that's good. Anyone else? I basically do fundamental research. First of all, I screen the stock with the help of screener routing, and I prefer the stocks which have the lowest P price earning ratio, lowest ratio, and the CAGR of 7 to 10% in the last 5 10 years. Net profit and sales. And I also study the stock in value research my website where I get to know whether the stock balance sheet has been rigged or not, fundamentals are strong. So I think his approach is similar but more quant-based, where he actually looks at numbers, historical performance of the company, and then decides about investing. So actually, I was looking at this transition. So most of the investors look for their own subjectivity. In the sense, I feel TCS is a very good company, and let me invest in that company. So those are one kind of investor. If my friend has invested in TCS and made a lot of money, let me also invest in TCS and make money. So those are very very basic, who does not have any knowledge about financial markets, but they know one thing is they can make a lot of money in financial markets, and they try to follow other people. Uh, that is one. Second is there's two kind of investor who do their own research, study what is happening in the market or for that particular company, and if they are like satisfied or convinced about the growth story or about the historical performance, they will invest in that market. But again, there is a lot of subjectivity in that investment. So in this workshop, I will try to have a systematic approach to investing and remove a lot of subjectivity, which brings in a lot of bias. In the sense, if you invest in Jawan Housing Finance and suddenly the stock price becomes how, your all the conviction, all the historical number crunching will be gone for a toss, and you will go out and sell. That's what is showing like first you say it's a really good company, and then some people are selling, then the stock price goes up, then some other people are selling, again goes up. In the end, it's like a panic situation, and there's like a financial crisis or something, and the stock falls. So just to avoid this bias, we'll try to see how we can invest in a systematic fashion, and that's where the Python role of Python or the automation comes into the picture. So if you invest in any kind of instrument, for example, if you invest in, say, Colgate, what risk are you exposed to? So you're typically exposed to two kind of risk. One is known as idiosyncratic risk, which is specific to a firm. In the sense, it will affect only that particular firm, and it will not affect any other firm. And this risk can be easily diversified away. So examples of idiosyncratic risk is if you invest in Yes Bank. So if any of you would be aware, like Yes Bank had a lot of credit crisis. In the sense, Yes Bank has given loans to all the corporates, and those corporates are not paying Yes Bank back. For example, they have given loan to Jet Airways, to Diwan Housing Finance, to Reliance Capital, and to all the companies, all the shady companies, and they are not getting the money back. So just assume you are in a lending business. You are lent to your five friends, and those five friends are not giving your money back. So that's a huge, like you had given them say 10 lakh rupees, and you are not getting that money back. So similar thing is happening with Yes Bank, and therefore if you see the stock price, which is the price chart, which is for a month, it was at 140 when it started. Now it's around 111, and few days back it even was around close to 100. So that's specific to Yes Bank. At the same time, if you open the price chart for HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, or for that matter any other stocks, it won't be impacted by this particular thing for the rise of NP of Yes Bank. And the second example is of the Jet Airways. So Jet Airways had huge debt, and it was not making huge profit. So their cost of capital was much higher than what amount of money they could make by flying airplanes. And eventually they could not pay their debtors back, and it went for bankruptcy. So similarly, this thing will only affect Jet Airways. It will not affect Indigo. In fact, Indigo has gained market share during this period, and it's rising. So it's specific to a stock. Any doubts? Anyone want to share their own story of they invested in some stock and it actually crashed? Just for our
So, like, I'm totally new to this, so I'm going to be asking really tough questions. But since Yes Bank had lended to Jet Airways and since it filed for bankruptcy, in that case, Yes Bank will also be affected, right? Its stock will also go down along with Jet Airways.
So that's a good question. So he says Yes Bank has lended to Jet Airways and Jet Airways has defaulted. So both are related, and it's not specific to a firm. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But to counter that argument, so State Bank of India, um, Punjab National Bank, and Kotak Bank, all those have also lended to Jet Airways, but they are not affected by it. Why is Yes Bank affected so much? Because they have lended to all the shady companies like Jet Airways, Reliance Capital, Diwan Housing Finance, and all of them have defaulted. So, a rough analogy would be you have lended to your five friends, and one of them is not paying you back. Still, you can sustain it. But if all five of them are not giving you back, then it's very bad, and this is what will happen to your stock price. But that was a good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so now we have a firm understanding of we should not put all our money in a single stock because we'll be exposed to such kind of risk. So a best way to avoid this is to diversify. In the sense, invest in more number of stocks or securities so that even if one of them goes down, the others will be able to maintain the portfolio level. So idiosyncratic risk or the firm level risk can be diversified away and can be reduced. So that's one kind of risk. The next kind of risk is something which affects all the companies in the market. So for example, if there is a rise in interest rate. Okay. So on the left side, you see it's a 10-year government bond yield. So government bond is basically government of India, which takes the money from people of India. and this is the rate at which they get the money, which is 6.86%. And if you see a year back, it was around 8%. So if someone is following the monetary policy,
Wow. Yeah, it is casting dropped down. Wow. Yeah, cast.
okay. So we were at, so we actually understood the risk which is specific to firm. That's one kind of risk. Another risk is something which all the firms get impacted because of it. So that is known as systematic risk. So if you see the left hand side, it's the 10-year government securities yield, which is 6.86%. And a year back it was 8%. So it has dropped almost like 1.14%. And at the same time, it's want to show you India, Afghanistan.
Connected to someone else's cast.
The problem is that it's not password protected. If someone else wants, they can cast it in there.
So who's that guy?
Someone, someone in there.
Someone is watching Oscar.
Keep us updated with the score, please.
It's like a
Okay. So at the same time, if you see the returns of Nifty, it's like from 10,000 to 12,500, which is like almost 20% of. It is not directly proportional. Like आज मैंने interest कम किया और कल market बढ़ गया, but it takes time to get the effect into the market. But over a long period of time, if the interest rate reduces, overall the industry, like all the firms, tries to do better because their cost of capital, in the sense if someone wants to build a manufacturing plant or needs working capital or any kind of money to build more products, that becomes cheaper, and in turn which helps to increase their volume and which increases their profitability. So a change in interest rate helps to actually helps to increase the sales for all the firms, and therefore all the firms benefit from it. A simple example to understand is if at 8% you're getting an auto loan or maybe a housing loan, so you will not buy it. But same after a year, you are getting the same thing at say 7%, which is a 1% cheaper. You might go for a housing loan, which will actually increase the profitability of banks, housing finance companies, and the cycle will keep on. Like same way, the auto loans will become cheaper, so on and so forth. So therefore, this kind of impact, every firm has it, and you have to deal with it. In the sense, you can't mitigate it, you can't diversify away, or you can't avoid this risk if you invest in markets. So therefore, this risk cannot be diversified away. Okay, so now comes the, okay, now understand some risk which can be diversified away and some other risk which cannot be diversified away. So there's a one very popular asset pricing, in the sense what should be the value of the asset which I am buying. For example, if I want to invest in TCS, which is Tata Consultancy Service, how much return I expect from it, say after a year. So that's what we are trying to do. We are pricing the value of TCS. So there is one very popular model with the name of capital asset pricing model. It simply says expected return from any asset, for example TCS, is nothing but the risk-free rate. Risk-free rate is maybe a government of India bond, because for India, if they default, everyone will default. So they don't have a risk. So we can safely lend to government of India. At the same time, it's not safe or it's not risk-free to lend to corporates such as Reliance Capital. They might default anytime. So risk-free rate in our case will be government of India. What is they are giving as a return. So any investor who wants to invest in TCS must at least be compensated with the risk-free rate. वरना फायदा नहीं है ना. मैं सिर्फ government bond में डालूंगा if I'm getting more returns than TCS. So this theory says a normal investor will only go for investment in stocks if he's at least getting compensated for the risk-free rate. Okay? Any doubts? What is risk-free rate? Okay, so risk-free rate is I give money to say this guy, and I'm 100% sure he will give it back to me. And why I'm sure he will give it back to me is because he's like a very big guy. He has a lot of money, and giving 1 lakh to him, he will surely not default. That's one thing. Past is there are a lot of rating agencies who rate them, looking at their balance sheet, XYZ. Basis of that, they give AAA rating, which is no default risk, kind of US market. So US, definitely you don't think US will default on any of the commitment compared to Greece, which has the probability of defaulting. So in India context, we can safely say government of India cannot default because they have access to a lot of capital, they are exposed to World Bank, they have a lot of things which is produced in India, they can collect taxes, they can do X, Y, and Z. So that is the risk-free rate. Okay? For simplicity, you can assume the bank FD rate. If you go to HDFC Bank, you get 6%. So that is the risk-free rate. That's not true. HDFC Bank can default, but just understanding purpose. Okay. So that is the first part which is taken care of. Second, the model says investors should not be compensated for the idiosyncratic risk because that can be diversified away, and he should be only compensated for the systematic risk which is taking in the market. For example, if there is a rise in interest rate, definitely the value of his investment will go down, and he should be compensated for taking that risk. So that is the second part of the equation of systematic risk premium. Okay. So how do I know the systematic risk of any asset? So any guesses? It's already there on the slide, but any guesses? I can't hear you.
Equity risk premium will be calculated on a different model based on like a historical premium is calculated written on a broad market equity index like Nifty or Sensex, like last 5 years what they have given the return minus your risk rating. So that will be considered your risk premium.
Okay, everyone understood? I didn't understand it. Everyone understood? Like, can you ask some questions so that you can clarify more on that?
Okay. Okay. Got. Okay. So equity risk premium. What is equity risk premium? Okay. So you are investing in equity, and you will be compensated for that investment. So that is the premium you are getting instead of investing in common bonds, and you are investing in equity in company's assets. So how you calculate, because it changes every year, right? Last year the premium was like 5%, the economic performed very well. So that time the premium was like 5%. On the extremely volatile market, the premium will be go up. Okay, so it's very difficult to calculate a premium. So in this scenario, there is a one method to calculate the historical premium. So historical premium is very simple. Last 5 years, like it's a very simple calculation. Last 5 years, take any broad market equity index, which represents your overall market performance. Like in India, if somebody asks me what is the Indian performance rate, how the Indian equity market perform, I would say just go and check Nifty or Sensex. So these are the broad market equity index. So I go and check last 5 years how they perform. Okay, and last 5 years my government bond return. Okay, so the return between two different index like risk-free rate and the risky asset. What you earned additionally is a premium. So that's how we calculate the risk premium on any equity asset.
Thank you. So we'll come to that in a moment, how to calculate that. But just for clarity purpose for everyone, basically we are trying to understand the expected return from PCS, and we want to understand what will be the impact of, say, if there's a change in interest rate, what will be the impact on TCS on that, and based on that, you should be compensated for that. So that's the simple equation which we try to come up with. So for that purpose, we can use beta, which is an estimate for systematic risk premium. Beta is nothing but you actually understand how much does the stock change for a 1% change in the market, which is Nifty 50. So if a stock changes 2 times compared to market, it's more riskier than market. And if there is a change in interest rate, if market falls by 1%, this stock will fall by 2%, and you should be like proportionately compensated for it. So let's see how to calculate beta. So beta is nothing but linear regression between the asset returns and the market returns. So we'll do this on historical data. So how to do that? Okay. So some codes for the tech guys. Can you see? Everyone see this? Backbenchers? No. Is it better? No. Full screen. Is it better? Okay. All right. So what we are trying to understand is how sensitive TCS with respect to market. Okay. So we can do this via linear regression. And how to do that in Python is this all notebook all about. So we'll first import the leverages which are required for this exercise. And the next step is to get the data. So we'll need the data for TCS and NSE, which is Nifty 50 index. So I'll use fix underscore Yahoo underscore finance to get the data, which indirectly gets the data from Yahoo Finance. And once I have the data, I will calculate the daily returns of TCS and daily returns of Nifty 50. So if I plot the daily returns, this is how it will look like. I'm skipping the code, assuming you are pretty much very sure in Python. If anyone has any doubt why this function, what is this function about, feel free to stop me. I'm happy to explain you. So these are the returns of yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but I am here just to know what is how we are going to use this Python and other things in our financial space. Yeah. So we are receiving that part, so that is the only part of what we are doing.
Okay, fine, fair enough. I can go slow on this. So based on the public demand.
See, even I was a developer named Jupiter.
Okay.
Just like we can do the of what is the systematic premium.
Yeah, sure. So is there a common link where we can share this notebook? So can you actually share this notebook? Okay, currently I think it's Okay, so probably you'll get after the session. Currently, you can just stay on this, assume it is running.
Okay, that was a key. So I just want to know.
Yeah, so this is just a minor part of my whole session. The second session is completely hands-on, where you will actually understand to code line by line the strategies. This very small piece of Python which is there in my session, so which I didn't wanted you to actually code and see whether it's working or not. You can just take the concepts or the theory part. What is the logic behind this? Code you already have, which will be available in GitHub after this session, which you can practice. If you have any doubts, then you can directly reach out to me. And the second session, you won't be disappointed. There is a lot of hands-on practice. Okay, so let me read this. So basically, pandas and numpy are very common libraries which are used for data manipulation, computing, and other stuff. Fixed underscore Yahoo Finance is a library which will be used to get the data of TCS and Nifty, and there's a plotting library, and the stretch model library will be used for the linear regression part. So first thing first, to do any kind of analysis, we need data. So where to get the data? Yahoo Finances for our helping. So we'll get the data for 5 years, which is from 2014 to 2014 start to 2018 end. Uh, and there's a syntax for Yahoo Finance where it has a method named as download. Showing you what kind of error are you getting. So you have to first install. It's not a default package which is there. So you can just write exclamation mark pip space install space fixed underscore Yahoo underscore finance. What kind of error? Okay, there are some dependencies. So maybe the author of this package failed to specify those dependency. But what I would advise all of you is rather than trying along with me on your laptop, if you can just focus on this and trust me, the scores are working and are not fake the output, then it will be much simpler. And we have a kind of Q&A, and after that we can have some discussion where he's happy to solve all your doubts. Okay, so this module has a method download which can get the data. So you have to just specify the ticker which can get from Yahoo Finance. Typically, the ticker for Indian stocks is the name of the ticker .ns. NS stands for NSC, which is National Stock Exchange of India. And then you have to specify the start date and end date from which we want the data for. So in this case, it's 1st Jan 2014 to 1st of December 2018. And at the end, I have to specify which column I want to work with. So by default, it returns open, high, low, close, and adjusted close. So if someone is not familiar with financial data, is every minute or every day there's a lot of trading which happens in a stock, such as TCS. So in a particular day, the price of TCS can go up, can go down, and can close at particular point. So all these values at which price it opened, what was the high price, what was the low price, what was the close price, all those things are returned here. And what was the total volume, in the sense how many shares were traded with each other, is returned by this method. And what is adjusted close is there's a lot of corporate action which happens for a stock. For example, for HDFC Bank, which is around 2,500, can be split into 5 stocks. In the sense, one stock can be split into 5 stocks. So definitely the price should be coming back to 500 rupees. So all those adjustments are taken care by adjusted close. So we'll be working with adjusted close in this module. Um, Once we have the data, the next thing is we'll calculate the daily returns, which can be done using PCT underscore change method. So, and it will be stored in appropriate column names, which is TCS returns and Nifty returns. These are daily returns which we'll be working with. So once I have the daily returns, I will see how if I invested 1 rupees in 2014, how it will look like or how it has grown till 2018. So for that, I will add 1 to the daily returns and take the cumulative product of it. It's like a geometric returns which I am taking here. So once I do that, it simply means 1 rupee invested in TCS is 2.2 rupees in 2018, end of 2018. So that's a very good investment which you can make a lot of money in. But that is not the point here. The point is this is how you calculate the returns. And the next is I will run a linear regression between TCS daily returns and Nifty daily returns. So this is a scatter plot where the y-axis is TCS daily returns and x-axis is Nifty daily returns. And you can plot the best fit line, and the slope of that line will be the relationship between the two. In this mathematical terms, it's the beta, which explains the relationship between y and x. So the code for this is I have used the ordinary list square method, which is available in stats tool package, and I have to call a fit method so that it will fit the line, and model.param0 will give me the beta, 1 will give me the constant, and so on and so forth. But we are not interested in that, we are just interested in beta. So you can directly use this method and get the beta. So the beta for TCS is 0.53.
Just one question away. The beta values that we calculated. So how do we determine that it is less than 0.5? So whether stock is good or bad or average?
Okay.
How do we determine?
Yeah, it's the next slide. Yeah, that's a good question. What do I do of this 0.53? So that's in the next slide, how to interpret beta. But for now, using this notebook, you get beta of TCS as 0.53. Right? Any doubts? Which input? No, we are not there yet. We are just at one piece, which is how to calculate beta, which is the relationship between the market returns and the stock returns. Okay, so adjusted closes, say daily, there's a some movement in TCS. It was at 100, tomorrow it is at 105. And at the same time, Nifty is at 100, and tomorrow it is at 101. So we are trying to understand what is the relationship. So the relationship is say 5 times. So that is nothing but beta, which we are trying to capture. Now we'll go back and understand. Yeah. So we are taking the percentage change. So in this case, it will be like in the example which I just told you is the returns of TCS will be 5%. At the same time, the return of Nifty will be 1%. And this 1% and 5% I will plot on a scatter plot. And the line which best fits this. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so now we got the relationship. Okay, so this was what your answer is, but before answering this, so we can safely say that systematic risk premium is nothing but RM is the return from market. So forget this equation, it's complicated, but just try to understand beta is used as an estimator of getting the systematic risk premium. So if you go back to the previous equation, which says investment in any or expected return from any asset is nothing but the risk-free rate plus the systematic risk premium. Now I'm telling you, systematic risk is nothing but how much is your stock impacted by a change in interest rate. For example, if market falls by 1%, how much is your stock falling? So that helps me to estimate the systematic risk premium, and that we are learned that can be done using beta. So So systematic risk premium can be captured through beta. So the expected return RI from any asset is equal to risk-free rate, which is a government bond or an HDFC FD, HDFC Bank FD, plus how much sensitive my stock is to market. And I'm just removing RS so that we don't double count it. So therefore RM is nothing but the returns from market. I'm removing RF so that we don't double count, and I multiply with the sensitivity of the stock with respect to market. So in our example, if the risk-free rate is 6% and the beta which we have seen is 0.53, and the expected return from Nifty, this is based on the historical uh, averages which we can expect from Nifty or investment in any broader index such as Nifty 50. These are just assumptions, these are just to explain the concepts. So if I assume that to be 14%, and I remove the risk-free rate, which is 6%. So it comes out to be 4.24. If I add this to the 6%, I get expected return from TCS is 10.24%. And this is a very famous model with the name of CAPM, which is Capital Asset Pricing Model. So it typically has created a framework and it says if the expected return from market is kind of 14% and the sensitivity of the TCS to the market is 0.53, then you can expect 10.24% from TCS. Yes. So idea here is not interest rate. It was just used as an example. One of the example. There are many macro or there are many factors which affects market as a whole. So, so this was one of the example which I took. So this was just an example. If purely speaking, the definition says systematic risk is something which affects all the firms in the market, and therefore you should be compensated for it because you can't do away with it. So, so the underlying assumption behind this model, every model has some kind of assumption and limitations. So underlying assumption behind CAPM model is if there is an event which affects all the firms in the market, you should be compensated for it. Interest rate is just, you can ignore that. It can be anything. It can be some credit crisis, or it can be some inflation, or it can be a war between India and Pakistan, or war between US and China, anything. So basically, if world war happens, every firm will be affected, right? So for that, you should be compensated. That's what the model says. So for that, it says what is the sensitivity of your stock to the market. So therefore, we understand if market rises by 1%, TCS typically rises by 0.53%. So based on that, we in the sense this famous model says the expected return from TCS is 10.24%. Okay. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. 14% is the historical returns which we can expect from markets, and simple ways take when was Nifty launched till date. What is the CAGR of Nifty? So it's roughly 14%. You can say it's 15%, but it's not the point of discussion here. You can get this estimate from historical data because to predict the future, the best thing or the best way is rely on the historical averages. Okay, so any questions? Okay, so let's understand what is this number 0.53 or what is this tell us. So beta of typically 1 means it's more volatile than market. So if it moves by 1%, it typically moves more than 1%. So a typical example of beta greater than 1 stock is Indiabulls Housing. Sorry, is Indiabulls Housing Finance, Just Dial, Adani. All those are like Yes Bank. All those like if index is 1%, those stocks will be like 2, 3, 5% up. So those are high beta stocks and high risk stocks. Nifty high beta index. So there is a There's a Nifty 50 index and there is Nifty high beta index. So if anyone is familiar with financial market and wants to take an exposure to high return, high risk strategy, then they can go for Nifty high beta rather than going for Nifty 50 investments. The next is beta of 1, which is as good as market. So there are very few stocks around of this nature. So Asian Paint is one of them. Then beta between 0 and 1, so which is TCS, which we already see, and there is Colgate Palmolive, which is everyone is aware of that stock. So that's between 0 and 1. So it doesn't matter if market keeps on moving 1-2%, it will be within that narrow range of its own, and it won't, your portfolio won't be volatile if you invest in such kind of stocks. And there are some stocks which does not have any correlation with the market. For example, the small cap stocks. So recently, if you have seen, market Nifty is touching all-time high. But if you see a lot of them who are invested in the market, they say, "यार मेरा portfolio तो loss कर रहा है, मैंने तो अभी पैसे ही बनाए नहीं, क्या news चल रहा है 12,000 Nifty ये वो, but they haven't made money." So the reason for that is they have invested in small cap stocks or something which is actually not performing as good as Nifty, or it does not have any kind of correlation. कि अच्छा कर रहा है बुरा कर रहा है उनको जो करना है करेंगे वो लोग. It's very not related to market. And the last category is negatively correlated to market. So for example, the gold and the volatility index, VIX, which is also known as fear index. So typically, जब भी market गिरता है, whenever the market falls, the VIX index typically shoots because there's a lot of fear in the market. And there is a gold because if there is something which is not right, for example, if there is a world war, all the equity indices will crash, but the prices of gold will go up because it is considered as a safe haven. So this is the interpretation of beta. Any questions?
This is something out of it. When you deal with options.
Options, okay.
Options, yeah. So there are option trades in that. So what is the best way to study this? Would be the best data for it. It's like market is going on.
So I can answer that, but definitely I will use a lot of words which will confuse the rest of the people. So we can take it offline. But in very layman language, the best stock to trade in is which has implied volatility that's very high. Just ignore everyone, just ignore this conversation. So if implied volatility is pretty high, you can simply short that option because nowhere in the world you can actually have that kind of volatility which can there. So for example, during elections, the implied volatility was way above. But if you see, the movement during that period was very small. So typically, it's best to short when the IVs are very high. Anyways, coming back to our topic, you had some questions, right? Yeah, so that's a good question. And also the limitation of this model, but that's a good question. What determines the beta? So if you see such stocks such as Indiabulls, Adani, which are like highly leveraged, in the sense the debt profile, the financial profiles are very leveraged. So whenever Nifty as a whole is doing well, somewhere the economy as a whole is doing well. For example, interest rates are falling, GDP is growing, inflation is in control. So these are the companies which can benefit tremendously from it. But there are some companies like Colgate Palmolive which are at the maturity stage. For example, they have a market share of 50+% in toothpaste and 30+% in toothbrushes. And maybe if they can penetrate in rural areas, but the scope is very limited. And nowhere people will start using two toothpaste in a like 3 to 4 times they won't start brushing in a day. So their market penetration is limited and the scope of usage is limited. So there is not much volatility in those business. Typically, category here will be FMCG companies like Britannia. You will eat biscuit today and tomorrow, no matter what happens. So therefore, the beta actually reduces. But this companies like Indiabulls, which are very sensitive to interest rates and other economic activity, therefore they are highly volatile compared to the broader market as a whole. And Asian Paint is like a different. It's like 70 years old company. It's tremendous balance sheet, financial profile, good ROCs, and it's like a good company. So typically, that's what people value them. Just hold on, I'm not able to hear you.
So how much attention we have to give it to beta? Because this beta can also misinterpret, give you wrong interpretation. I mean, just consider example of gas bank. I mean, if I see, if I take a understand the projected value of the gas bank, right? The key value for the past 5 year data. I mean, gas bank was heavily rated on FT, right? Like long time ago, then there's no crisis at that particular time. But now because this crisis, there's the correlation has just gone like in a different direction. So this can give you misinterpretation, right? You cannot just rely on beta to give you the projected price, the projected return. So what else you need to look apart from beta?
Okay, thank you. So, thank you for your question. So, yeah, beta is not a good estimator. So, because beta value can change, so you can't rely on the historical data. So, for example, the expected return from TCS is 10.24, but in reality, it turns out to be a different. TCS actually gave you how much? 8 plus 6, 14, 15%. So it gave you 15%. Okay, so we are just going in future. So instead, the expected return was 10.24, and the actual returns turns out to be 15%. So in that case, there is this 4.4% extra return which we got from TCS, and that typically people call as alpha in the world. So, so to answer your question, beta is not a reliable estimator. You should not solely rely on it. And typically, what is observed is, so this model has limitation, CAPM model. So it's not widely used. This is just introduced so that you have some kind of basic understanding of how the models have evolved. At the end of this lecture, you have pretty clarity of which one to use and which one not to use. So I'm not completely answering your question, but I'm just partially bringing in new information so that it will eventually lead to what is the right way of investing. Does that make sense? Okay. So if it comes out to 15%, then we know that this 4.4% is some alpha, which is we can't explain that alpha of why this 4.4% is coming from. So if you see the old equation of CAPM, we have a red one, which is the alpha, which is anything above what we expected is typically known as alpha. So a lot of like researchers.
Indicate that if your alpha is high, then your probably stock is likely to correct in the near term because it has given you more returns than it actually should have.
Yeah. So there are two reasons. So there are two ways to look at this information of TCS. So one is he was expecting 10.24 and he got 15. So he says it should come back to 10.24. So basically he should sell the stock because he will get the extra return. So that is one way, which is the correct way of looking at it. And typically this kind of investors are known as mean reversion kind of investors, which expect everything will fall back to the mean level. But there are some scientists which are known as actually known as Fama-French, which they actually had similar questions like yours. यार ये 4.4 आ क्यों रहा है? आ क्यों रहा है? कहाँ से आ रहा है? So they actually given a thought about it, and they said that there are other factors. The beta एक factor हो गया. उसके अलावा there are other two factors which can better explain future returns. मतलब बीटा देख हो गया उसने 10.24 बोल दिया, but if you include size and value to your equation, then you can better predict the expected return from an asset. So ये size, what is this size and value? So size factor typically says that if you invest in small cap stocks compared to large cap, the returns will be proportionately or relative basis will be more. The small cap से ज़्यादा आएगा compared to large cap. So what they have done is they have researched the US stocks for last 50 years, and then they have come up with this kind of thesis or explanation. So उन्होंने ये सब किया and they created a diversified portfolio. So what they are trying to say is, hey, only with beta, 70% of your returns will be explained. But with my two new factors, which is size and value, I am able to explain 90% of the return. तो वो जो नीचे रेड में आया ना, वो existing equation थी, उसमें मैंने वो रेड वाली दो चीज डाल दी, which is size and value. So with this new equation, whatever the expected return comes, that will be close to the future return. 90% of time it will be very close to it. So that is size and value is typically invest in cheap stocks will yield a higher returns compared to investing in expensive stocks. So how do you determine if something is cheap or something is expensive? So they have started in this particular paper which they have written, which is Fama-French three-factor model. They have used book to market ratio. So book to market ratio is book value of any finance students. So book value is what is the balance sheet strength or the asset minus liability. आपकी book value कितनी है? Divided by the price or the value of the stock. So if that is like book to market is say very low in the sense कि price और book बहुत करीब है एक दूसरे के साथ, तो वो बहुत cheap होगा. But if you are paying a very huge price compared to your book value, so book value दो है और price 10 है, so that is very expensive stock. So if you invest in a cheap stock compared to an expensive stock, आपके returns will be much better. So that is the value factor. And if I add those two factors in this equation, I am able to explain 90% of the equation. Returns. Okay. Any doubts? Okay. Alright. So this was just the starting. तो बहुत सारे लोग ने दिमाग लगाया, अरे दो फैक्टर तो नहीं हो सकते, बहुत सारे फैक्टर हो सकते हैं दुनिया में, ये तो कुछ भी हो रहा है. So even they Fama-French actually in 2005. So वो उनका जो मन है, sorry. Okay, so what I'm saying is I have not nothing to do with it. I just said in their research paper they have chosen this. Might be some reason which I am not aware of, but it's a valid point. You should actually, to value any stock, whether it's cheap or expensive, you should look at multiple factors such as earning growth, what is the debt to equity ratio, what is the free cash flow which the firm is generating, what is the future prospect. Based on that, you should arrive at. That's well taken argument of yours. But in their paper, they have used a single ratio, which is might be a policy, and we should not fall prey to it. Yeah, so it was just an example, but you can modify as per your. So over the years, there are a lot of efforts and things which have went into this, and a lot of people are spending substantial amount of time in finding those factors. So all there are many factors which are actually now found, and if you want to take exposure to any of the factors, for example, you have to take exposure to size, value, then there are some ETFs which are available in global markets. And in India, particularly for Nifty, if you go to their website, then you will be able to see those indexes. So if you are a kind of investor who thinks small cap stocks will give more returns than large cap stocks, then some proportion, so some proportion of your portfolio you can allocate to that factor. If you think value is something which can yield good returns, then you should allocate some amount of capital to those factors. And how do you take exposure? So programmatically or in linear language, you should buy the assets which are looking good on that factor. For example, I'll buy small cap stocks and I will sell the assets which are looking bad on those factors. For example, I will short the large cap stocks. But in India, there are some restrictions in shorting. So either you can get there through futures, or maybe you can just have the buy side and ignore the short side. So that is how you take the exposure to the factors. So over the years, there are so many factors. कि आप किसी से बात करोगे, कुछ भी कचरा फैक्टर आपको पकड़ा देगा, बोलेगा एकदम तोड़ो फैक्टर है, आप इसमें इन्वेस्ट कर लो. So you should not fall prey to those factors. So some people are laughing, but there are people who have fallen prey to it. For example, there was this housing boom, housing thing, like सब लोग housing finance company में डाल रहे थे, तो अचानक से अभी प्रॉब्लम आ गया है. So that is not considered as a good factor. So a rough analogy, if someone is still not able to understand this, say there are a group of students, maybe of 5 years old, there are say 100 students, and out of that you have to find इसमें से कौन एकदम विराट कोहली बन सकता है या एकदम क्रिकेट टीम में जा सकता है इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम में. So what kind of things what characteristics which you look for in that person? Anyone? So basically you look at how good he is at catching the ball, how good he is in batting, how good he is in fielding. But you will not look at कि वो Python में कितना अच्छा कोडिंग कर लेता है. उसका कुछ रिलेशनशिप नहीं है कि वो विराट कोहली बन सकता है कि नहीं. So, like a good fielding, batting, and catching is known as good factors in our investment terminology. But if he is able to code in Python or not, it's a bad factor, and you should not fall prey to it. For example, stocks which start with letter A, Amazon, Apple, उसमें नहीं डालना चाहिए. ऐसा कुछ है नहीं, दिमाग नहीं है उसमें. मतलब वो अच्छे चल रहे हैं, वो तुम्हें प्रूव भी कर देगा. But you should be very firm over it. There is no intuition, मतलब कुछ logic नहीं है उसमें. ठीक है? So that is how you determine good factors. So first is there has to be some economic intuition. Second is it should have empirical evidence in the sense how it has performed over the last 40, 50 years. Then only you can consider that factor to be a good factor. So here are some examples of factor. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just for example purpose. So there is this size and value which we already discussed, and there's this momentum factor which is going with the trend, and there's another which is volatility. So volatility says the low volatility stocks like Colgate, Britannia, all those TCS have given historically better returns compared to high volatility stocks such as Adani, Indiabulls, and so forth. That is what this volatility factor is all about. So just to conclude is, a lot of the hedge funds are now spending substantial amount of their own time in finding the factors which are still not discovered. For example, AQR has a dedicated research team which are working to identify this source of returns which are not well known. And if they are able to do that, they get an edge in the market. And yeah, so just to summarize what we have learned is, so initially we started, beta was the sole estimator of the future returns. Then there was this two guys, Fama-French, who said no, beta is not the sole guy, there is this size and value thing. And then later on, there are a lot of these guys which have found a lot of factors historically proven to give better returns and have some economic backing behind them. Some of the examples are momentum, volatility, and there are a lot of them. Like there are the style factors, there are the economic factors which can do. And the good part is this factors does not work only in equity markets. Some of them only work in equity markets, but some of the factors can work across markets and across geographies. I can replicate the same factor in US market, Europe market, India market, and for commodities, for equity markets, and for futures, anything. So that's it from my side. Thank you for the lovely audience. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
I think that was the next thing, the Q&A session if you want to do that. I just wanted to know if you can give an example of a factor which does not pertain to, like, which pertains to only one sector, like equity, that does not pertain to future.
So value is one of the factors. So futures, I understand you're referring to commodities futures and all the futures of the world. So the value factor, which is book to market value, is very specific to equity markets. And same, it's not replicable easily to other markets. For example, it's very difficult to understand whether gold is cheap or expensive with respect to other commodities. So that is slightly difficult. It can be replicable in FX market because FX has some kind of metrics to measure whether it's cheap or expensive. For example, there is this real effective exchange rate, which can be used as a measure to value a FX asset, but very difficult to value a commodity. If gold 30,000 है, पता नहीं cheap है, expensive, कुछ metrics नहीं मिला with respect to others.
are more of subjective in
Yeah,
nature.
it's all subjective.
On the value and these things are subjective. So even if you talk about the, let's say, the HDFC, the vertical HDFC Bank commands multiple of almost 5 times book value, and your PSU bank commands just one. So whatever the management, whatever is the 4 times the value, it doesn't make sense. Number of people have gone short in HDFC Bank and long in HDFC Bank. Till date they have paid. So HDFC Bank is one day going on. But I don't know how much pressure or how much percent we will give to this value thing. That is, so it's all about probability.
It's probability and it's historically proven in the sense you are talking about very short term horizon or say last 1 year or maybe 5 years and specific to Indian markets. But these two scientists have actually looked at US equities for last 40 years and that's what they have concluded. And the factor which you are talking about is the quality factor. So quality typically says the firms with better financials, such as higher ROC, higher return on equity, higher sales growth, can outperform the stocks on the other side, which is low ROE, low ROC, low sales growth. So typically HDFC Bank is a high quality stock, so you should buy it compared to a PSU stock, which is a low quality stock. So ideally, a single factor is not substantial to invest in. You should have multiple factors. So, for example, if there is a factor which is A on value and D on momentum, so that factor won't make you much money. But a factor or a stock which is B on momentum and B on value, such as the fundamentals are improving, that's why there is some momentum. Those kind of stocks will actually give you good returns.
So you mentioned a few times shorting. Uh, can you just explain with an example what exactly do you mean by short?
So shorting, okay, I do understand. Okay, shorting is something which you don't have and you are selling in the market. For example, you don't have a car, going in and selling the car. That is shorting. You don't have the asset, but you are selling in the market. For example, you don't own any stocks of TCS and you are selling in the market. That is how that is possible. That's finance. So yeah, I said in India you can't do that, but in US market you can do that. How it happens? It's legal. In US, how that happens is if I go and short Apple, so what will happen is if I use interactive broker as my broker, that broker will actually go to a pension fund, mutual fund, or this guy who has bulk of Apple, so he is ready to lend it to you. So he will lend it to you for some interest on it, and then you can actually give it to the person to whom you are selling. So very simple example, you don't have a car and you are selling it to this guy, the blue. So you will get car range from this guy, give it to this guy. He will definitely charge you some interest, and after say sometimes like a month or 2 months, you will return his car, pay him the interest, and do whatever you want. It's not liquid. Yeah, so SLP is in India, but it's not liquid, and mostly. Implement a small cap strategy on that, it will not work. Yeah, it's not allowed. And there are a lot of stocks which are moving out of FI. So there's a lot of inventory which is going out of this facility also. So in India, it's difficult. We can go through futures to do this rather than SLP.
Considering the global investing scenario, how much weight would you give to country factors, country risks? Let's say some countries could be more promising in terms of a better economy, or some countries could be more risky, like dependent on single commodity as their source of country income, economic income. So, while investing, how much weightage do you give to countries, let's say?
So to be frank with you, I don't have any answer to that, but definitely that can be one of the factors of which country will outperform the other countries. So do you think US is going to outperform Australia? Do you go long?
better growth because US is mostly growing at a that rate.
So it will be a growth factor. So you will distinguish the countries based on growth. For example, you think Africa, India are high growing economies, so you go long on it, and you will go short on European or Australian economy, which are developed mature, which will not grow much. So that can be one of the factors, and typically we have a lot of thoughts, hypotheses, and that's not how we found the factor. So you have a economic intuition, now go back and check whether there is an empirical evidence of following this strategy. And if yes, then yes, you have found a factor for it. Simple, just take all the countries, write the growth numbers next to it, divide it in two parts, see, go long on one basket, short on another. If short is not permitted, just ignore the second part and see what the returns are.
I have a question. For example, most of the portfolio managers use a factors called interest rate or GDP growth rate. So, for example, a few companies are very capital expensive. They mostly depends upon the cost of capital. If the interest rate goes up, like the most of the portfolio managers, what they do, like they underweight the capital expensive companies and they overweight like FMCG or other companies who do not have any influence with the daily factors because the company do the performance is very constant. So we can implement adding a lot of factors to the multiple factors model. So we can keep adding the factors and we can implement a strategy. Is it works? Okay.
Yeah, why not? So the whole idea was we started with beta, then two factors came in. So it does not end there. You just keep on adding the factors or remove the factors which are not good based on your opinion. That's where you have a portfolio. Any other questions?
So question is, can we also add technical factors? Like any normal moving averages and all that stuff to programming stuff. Kind of combination of fundamental and technical.
So basically, I'm not a judge or something to say this is good, this is bad. Whole thing is like given your definition of what is a good factor, which is does it have an economic intuition and has it worked like in last 10, 20, 30, 40 years? It's empirical evidence. If these two conditions are satisfied, then you have something worth to bet on. And if you think your technical strategy, fund strategy, is worth those 2 points, then why? Quality. Quality factors. So, but
Yeah. So, just want to go like any idea that what is that factor that is extensively used by all these portfolio managers, fund managers in India, and works very well for India market. It's very this factor differs on different markets, right? So, what does that work very well for India?
Historically speaking, quality factors, quality minus jump is the factor which has worked very well in India. But a lot of fund managers have different factors. For example, S. Naren from ICICI Prudential uses this value stocks. But this guy might not agree with Sunil Naren because he's very opposite to that. So there are different factors practiced by different fund managers in India. There is no common thing. Historically, I can say quality has worked, but I don't know whether it will work in future or not. So therefore, exposure to multiple factors is important. And momentum is a factor which has worked across geographies and across asset classes. That's what we'll see in the next question. Any doubts? Any questions? So that's
Like, can we assume, can we count in Twitter sentiment analysis as a factor in that equation?
That's a good question. And in fact, Twitter and news and all those what we can say, textual sentiment analysis has gotten a lot of pace recently. So it's worth considering in your portfolio. But the drawback is these are very new. So it won't have much of the history to backtest on. So that part will remain untested, but you have some kind of intuition, economic intuition behind it, and you have limited history. So, but the second part is not completely satisfied, but still you can consider it. So he's saying it on Twitter, Trump says, Alkuch Iran Gaya. So basically, S&P falls. So that becomes one of the input for buying or selling an asset. And there are a lot of like in Tesla, Elon Musk, he says a lot of things on Twitter, which actually impacts the stock of Tesla. So it's a good tool, but you have to thoroughly test it. And the challenge is not only whether it works or not, the challenge is आप उसको convert कैसे करोगे मतलब Elon Musk is saying उसको machine को करना है आपको नहीं करना है आपको तो हजारों को tweets आएंगे so you can't sit and do it you have to pass it through a natural language processing tool so whether that tool is effective or not अगर good लिखा है but not good लिखा है तो अच्छा है बुरा है तो machine को समझना चाहिए good है तो definitely a positive word, but preceded by a not, which is a negative word. So easy is your NLP, it is your algorithm able to detect all those things, and there are a lot of sarcasm which is there in the tweet. तो हमको भी समझ में नहीं आता मशीन को यूज करना. So बहुत सारे challenges हैं, but I'm not denying it has a value to predict.
In most cases, however, this would be like for companies that are B2C or there's no way B2B companies would be as dependent on things like Twitter sentiment analysis or news analysis. Like,
mostly people talk about B2C, Apple, iPhone, and Amazon services, but nobody talk about 3M क्या कर रहा है या Zappo India क्या कर रहा है. So for those, the number of tweets will be very low or minimal. So it won't have a minimum sample. So stats version of the 30 tweets say मुझे to determine whether it is positive or negative. वो आपको मिलेगा ही नहीं for example size. You will not get to use it. In fact, consumer companies की जो टॉप नहीं होगी उसके अलावा आपको कुछ मिलेगा नहीं ये वो प्रोडक्ट कौन यूज कर रहा है.
If there is a viral hashtag, it will have an impact, like ban 90 because maybe racism there, whatever. And as for the Twitters or how much the impact it has, can be sort of correlated.
Yeah, so if there is a sample available, then you can pass it through an NLP algorithm to determine whether it's good or bad. But this algorithm was saying if you don't have the substantial number of tweets, for example, some brand like 3M India, which no one is aware of, or maybe some very little people are aware of, and out of those samples, very few will be tweeting about it. So it's very unlikely you can use that strategy on that country. So it's very restrictive, say top 10 or 20 companies, which are very well known to this night.
My question is like, can we add ML to factor investing? Can we add ML to factor investing? ML is machine learning.
So it's a good question, Santosh. So he's saying, can I add machine learning to factor investing? So basically, I think you meant you want to time the factors.
It's based on alpha, beta, 1, and beta 2, are all historical data.
Yeah.
So we calculate all the values through historical data of past years as we see here. So we use that data for ML.
Yeah. So factor timing, right?
Exactly.
So factor timing in the sense which factor will work tomorrow and which factor will work 2 years later. We suggesting to use ML, but just cautious is a lot of people have actually struggled to time the market. This is time the factor. But yeah, it's not to say that you can't do that. But history says it's very difficult to time the market. Even this great Warren Buffett says, I think do everything in the world but not time the market. So, but there are some people like hedge funds like Renaissance Technology which are using this techniques to the best. And so they don't leak much, but they somewhere they are written they use the machine learning algorithms to predict what's going to happen in future. Well, many percent.
Use all the PhDs for doing
Yeah, so they don't hire finance, they hire PhD in maths.
PhDs for the
Yeah, PhD in maths because
yeah.
that's where it becomes useful. Any other questions?
There are a lot of news regarding this.
So basically, there is a lot of news report regarding high frequency trading, etc. So, and people say that even some big banks or companies can manipulate the stock market. So, is it can we actually use these to make money better, or is it mostly manipulation, insider trading that gets precedence?
So, frankly, I would avoid to answer your question because whatever I answer, you just try quoting, are you doing manipulation? Are you doing this? So, I don't know manipulation happening or not. If you have some evidence, report to SEBI.
Doubled just like in the closing session because there was some news like from 45 over it to 90.
So, if you have some thorough evidence, then report to SEBI as soon as possible and let's take action. So just figure out who is that and just tie up with it. And maybe someone else will report against you. But ideally, you should not go that way. You should not make money using false practices. It can make you money for say some months, but eventually will be caught. There are cases like Enron. There are cases of insider trading. In US, it's taken very seriously. In India, it should start picking up. And I totally believe if you want to play fair, don't fall for this kind of practices. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Thank you for such a lovely audience, and we'll have a break.